Welcome to this episode of Only a Movie. We're going to talk about the Netflix original film, What Happened to Monday. Was Robert McKee right when he claimed that a culture cannot evolve without honest, powerful storytelling? Was poet Carl Sandburg onto something when he claimed that Hollywood is the foremost educational institution on Earth? Can movies today transcend mere entertainment and help us make sense of life? This is our attempt to look at movies and how they succeed or fail at fulfilling the human longing for meaning. Or something like that. Yeah, we thought we'd take a different approach this time, and instead of hitting the movie theater, we hit Netflix and check out one of the recent Netflix original films. We ended up deciding on the sci-fi sort of dystopian movie that is What Happened to Monday. Not to be confused with the time travel independent film The Girl from Monday from a few years ago. Different movie. But I always think of The Girl from Monday and then What Happened to Monday. Feels like it should be a sequel, not related.
You are one of the few people that would pick up on that.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that was a movie a few years ago.
Before you watch this, there are spoilers.
Lots of them.
Lots of them.
So watch the movie first.
Just watch it.
So watch the movie first.
It's a good movie. You should watch it. If you don't like violence, then maybe not. But if you're okay with it, then yeah, watch it.
I'm always a sucker for a good dystopia type story. And this plays off of, I think, some very familiar themes in terms of a overpopulated world and government with too much power, really, that proposes a solution that is supposed to help with this overpopulation problem. There's a lot of, I think, areas in which they kind of skipped forward a little bit, so we don't get a whole lot of explanation exactly why it is that, there's this fertility thing going on where people are having twins or just multiple babies.
Births.
Yeah, it's in there in the opening credits a little bit, kind of the montage.
It's something about the genetically modified food
Yes.
causing birth defects and multiple births. I think they said something in the
Right,
credits. Opening.
yeah. You do have to really kind of get glued on the opening credits, that whole montage, because it is kind of an information dump right up front, so they can quickly get you into the rest of the movie. It's relatively high concept, but it is, I think, at its core, mostly interested in being a cool action movie to some degree.
No, yeah, it was cool. I wasn't expecting all that action.
They're playing off of a lot of familiar tropes, I think, to some degree. Some things that feel very Matrix-y. You got the folks sitting back in the apartment, telling one character where to go. Where do I go next? Where do I get? I'm always interested in these themes and ideas of where is the world headed and what picture do we have? Not necessarily because I think sci-fi does a great job of predicting literally where we're going, but it does offer up these sort of philosophical questions of, are we willing to go in these directions? So this feels right at home to some degree with stories like Brave New World. 1984, you've got a very controlling government that controls everything. Fahrenheit 451, controlling government that burns all kinds of information literature because that's dangerous. Different pictures of dystopia kind of crop up periodically, and they've been particularly prevalent recently. I don't know what has been going on for us as a culture, but I think we're starting to see some of that in the sense of a lot of unrest socially and politically that's been in the air for a while. So that's why we've been seeing things like The Hunger Games and The Maze Runner and Divergent and all these other sort of dystopian movies. Those are intended for a younger audience. This is definitely intended for more of a mature audience. I would classify it as certainly an R-rated film given both the violence and the sexual content. So.
Yeah. I forgot about that part.
You love that part?
No, I said I forgot about it. Trying to push it to the back of my mind.
Lies. She's like, oh, yes.
Oh, no, that's not happening to me.
No?
Because I have 4 sisters, or 3 sisters, I would make the 4th sister. What would we do in a situation like that?
Yeah.
Especially where we all kind of look alike. You could totally pull that off. What sister would turn? I'm thinking of which one. Maybe I'll go snipe her out. Yeah.
What if you're the one who turns?
Nah. I know which one would turn.
You know which one would stab you in the back.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Stab us all in the back. But it made me think of that, like, what they went through, what the sisters went through, having to be, like, cooped up for 30 years.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Somebody's gonna break. Somebody's gonna want to live their life. Well, maybe if it was like my mom and dad that had to train us for what could come. Somebody finding out about us and being able to defend ourselves. Each one of them had their own special gift. He pulled out, their dad or grandfather pulled out, each of their special gifts from them. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I would let somebody cut my finger off for my sister.
That's a tough one. Yeah.
I would kill my sister. I'd just kill her.
It's just, yeah. I just as a parent, like, I'm, picturing, like, my own child. I'm like, I can't do that to her.
But knowing that you have to make them all look identical, they all have to.
Yeah, their survival is predicated on all of that. So
overall, I really, really enjoyed the movie. I thought it was a really good film. But I think what I would have liked to have seen more is the story of the father or the grandfather, right? Yeah,
I keep saying.
And how he discovered their skills and figured out what would be the best job for them, and how he kept them all alive through this very pacifistic approach. Every moment they had with William Dafoe in there and what he was doing for those grandchildren of his was very powerful, I think, in the sense when you see him cut off Monday's finger, you know why he's doing it, but he's definitely being rigid, but you understand the reason. But then later on you see how painful that was for him to do that. So like there's so much depth to that character that I think could have been explored more.
Right, because they kind of dropped that character too.
Yeah, they didn't say what happened to him. Or, you just assume like 30 years later he's probably dead because he was old. Yeah. I guess I would say for me the recognition of each of them having their own specific thing that they were great at was when, I think it was Wednesday, the one that was kind of like the Karate Kid of the sisters.
Yeah,
was it Wednesday?
She's like the hardcore.
Yeah,
like,
the hardcore fit one that was like doing all the running and jumping from building to building.
Yeah.
They said you can make this jump. You trained your whole life for this. So that is what made it click for me. Like he pulled out each of their own special things. Like then you have the one that was at the computer that looked like every computer nerd with the hat on their head. She was good at at that. So that's when it made me realize that that's probably something that he did was
he pulled out of
each one of them. I don't know, but he pulled out the one like Monday like getting strangled during sex, but I don't know how he pulled that one out.
I don't think he pulled that one out. I think they were responsible for some of their own things.
Yes, of course.
But that does bring up a really interesting point that, this idea of secrets, when your existence is so intricately tied to other people, to this small group of people, but your sisters, right? Is there room for secrets?
Yes, there is. I have, like I said, I have 3 sisters. So yes, we all have our own individual personalities. We all have our own things that we're good at, and we have our secrets. There's some things I'm not going to tell my sisters.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
But you're not day to day having to walk outside into the world and pretend to be the same person, right?
Correct. But that's what gave them away. Well, that's what they thought gave them away.
Right.
Like, and we thought that the one that was risque was Friday. And it was not.
I totally thought it was just by her embarrassed reaction. I thought that she.
Yeah.
I was like, ooh, okay. But then she never came forth.
I do get what you're saying, though. You're saying like they were supposed to go home and tell each other about their day.
Yeah.
They have the end of the day meeting. That never came up.
Yeah, because Monday never divulged that she was in love with someone. Certainly never divulged that she was pregnant. Those secrets, at least certainly in this particular instance, in an instance where
It's okay.
in an instance where your existence is so integrally tied into someone else knowing and really being able to be you and everybody, like all of you impersonating the same person. It seems like that's a fundamental breakdown of that process. It's just an interesting observation that they're forced into a situation in which normal secrets that we would normally take for granted, not even that we would think of secrets, it's just I'm being private, like that's my business, and that's nobody's business, and I don't have to divulge that, becomes a major liability for them, which is an interesting sort of philosophical conundrum. Because it really puts them in a situation of where really does one person end and the next one begin in any practical sense, because they are 7 people trying to inhabit one identity.
Yeah.
What I think is interesting, based on what you're saying, is aside from Monday, I think all the other ones felt that who they were when they were being Karen Setman was not really them. And Monday really was, this is who I am, so this is my secret, because I am Karen. Nobody else is, so this is mine.
Right.
And so I think that's where that comes in. That's why she held that to herself, because other people kind of accept the fact that, I'm not going to ever find true loves. Like, I'd like that, but I'm not going to find it, so I'm fine with just hooking up here and then. For Monday, she ended up finding it. And I think she felt entitled, to a sense, to it. She was like, I'm the firstborn. I'm like, when that line came up, I was like, by seconds, like, come on.
But I would do that. I would say that. I mean, it's only by 11 months. Well, like me and my sister that's underneath me were practically the same age. I could see where she felt the need to be separated, because she was told to lead by example. Like, she's conditioned to like, these are you're the oldest. It's your job to do the right thing. You got your sister's they're gonna follow what you do. That is told to the oldest child all the time.
It's a lot of pressure, right?
It's a lot of pressure.
It is a lot of pressure.
The scene where he said, well, when one of you does something, it happens to all of you. So I can remember being a little girl, and not so much a little girl, but like a preteen, and my sisters and my brother like doing something horrible, and then all of us getting in trouble for it, not just the one person. Then I lock them in the attic when my parents left. But I could see that, being the oldest child.
But there's a difference between like 11 months or years versus
a couple of seconds.
Couple seconds or a minute. They can argue minutes, right? Like, I'm 5 minutes older than you. It's like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like,
but you're still the first. There's something about being the first.
Well, and I think more to your point, how she was treated.
Right. But when Thursday went out skateboarding and came home with her finger dangling off of her hand, the first one to get their finger chopped off was the one that came out first. So there's a lot of pressure put on her. And then when she gets pregnant, she's like, forget these girls. They don't even want to live they're playing the role. They're not being the role. So I need to save my children, and unfortunately they have to go.
A really interesting philosophical question underneath these kinds of dystopian stories, and this in particular, is this notion of at what cost are we willing to survive? What justifies survival? But I think there is something to be said about what trauma does, what kind of stress does to potentially drive people into a position of, I just want my life. Certainly 3 decades is a long time to go through anything, let alone, something so completely alien and stressful as what they're going through. One of the cool things about really good sci-fi, I don't know if I'd say this is really good sci-fi, but at least it's trying to enter into that realm of like some very high concept ideas. But that notion of what is the cost of survival? What am I willing to sort of put in to survival? And at what point Or is there a point at which we say, I don't know, I'm out. This is too much. Like, this seems like an unreasonable bargain.
Thursday shoots Monday, right? And then they find out she's pregnant. And then it's kind of like, oh, she did this to protect her children. It's like, she killed all your sisters. And now you're like, oh, like, we miss Monday. And it's like, I get like, I mean, if it was my sibling, I would be very sad and miss her and or him, like both my siblings, you know, I'd be really upset. But it was just funny how they're like, oh, okay. Because when
it feels very quick, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, it feels like that kind of.
And not only that, and like, again, like, I'm not an surgeon, and it's like hindsight maybe it's 2020, but if you got 7 identical siblings, you could easily get pregnant and take as much time as you want off because another sibling will just take over for you.
They could just divvy it up.
And then if you want to go back to work, you got 7 siblings to take care of those 2 kids. Like, those kids can, like, it would suck, but they have to go like you did, but they could have that same experience. Or maybe it'll be a little bit difficult because maybe they're not identical. And that's like maybe the fear there. They seem to be so close that it was very odd that I get you not telling somebody you fell in love and maybe not wanting to tell them that you're pregnant, but then to say, like, I'm going to kill you, that to me feels a bit of a jump.
I think that's maybe the central flaw for the movie that keeps it for me from being like in the great sci-fi category. In that, at the core of like this kind of dystopian storytelling is not always the possibility of this happening. Like, is this really possible? It's more of the sort of general plausibility that maybe we could go down a path and that would be similar to this, and what would that be like? What are the moral, ethical implications of being in a world like this? You know, we know it's in Europe somewhere. We don't really get a whole lot of like, what's this city exactly? And it's convenient that this is all happening. Like, they're in the same city, that the woman who created this whole thing is, you know, it's really, in a sense, stepping back and being metaphorical in the sense that it's functioning as a microcosm, right? A miniature version of the world, of an imagined world. So we're not concerned about what's happening in South America or in the United States of America or in Australia or China. We're just looking at what's happening in Europe, and really in this particular city in Europe.
Now that you're saying this, maybe it is their own little world because not everybody had the same accent.
Yeah, it's certainly it's a bit of a different picture of Europe, a futuristic dystopian Europe, than presented in, say, like Children of Men. You know, that mostly is dealing with, which continues to be a very relevant topic, the fear of the other, the fear of the immigrant, you know, and closing borders and being so afraid of resources being stolen by that. This
sounds like America too.
Yeah, it sounds like America too. America's definitely struggling with that reality. And it puts it in a sci-fi context, but there is a reality in which we can step back and say, okay, so what's inspiring this kind of storytelling? Like, I just finished listening to the audiobook for The Circle. You know, we watched that movie a while back. That story, again, it feels to me like it's right at home amongst, you know, Fahrenheit 451 and 1984, Brave New World, that kind of stuff, because it feels like this very dark look into maybe where we're heading as a society with the age of social media. But that's what it's born out of. That kind of storytelling is born out of, here's where we are right now. What's a potential, like, maybe exaggerated look, but by putting things in an exaggerated context, sometimes we're better able to examine, especially in a shorter time frame, like 2 hours for a movie, examine the ethical implications of something. And so I think this, to a great degree, a movie like this is born out of the reality that as we look around at the world, especially in affluent countries, in the United States, we consume a disproportionate amount of the resources of the world. And at some point, there's a recognition that those resources are limited. I think there's that sense in which this is born out of those kinds of speculations.
In Haiti, I believe they have a big issue with people just dumping stuff into the waters, recycled stuff, and recyclable things. And there's a group of people that will go and collect those things and turn them into, resources after they, recycle it. So that's an issue that's already, at hand, but it's like only a handful of people that are helping that country thrive through picking up the trash out of the water and recycling it.
Like fossil fuels, there's such a fight against it, a fight against electric cars, and it wasn't about the value that it could bring. It was the fact that there was so much money invested in fossil fuels that it was not going to be beneficial for profits for these companies to use electric cars
Right.
to do it. And now we're seeing a shift in electric cars being more of the mainstream. And it's not the mainstream, but it's moving towards that way.
Right.
But it took a while to get there, which is it is what it is. Like I'm not complaining. I'm glad it's going that direction, but there was an issue with it.
Oh, certainly. Yeah. As detailed in Who Killed the Electric Car.
Yeah, I
Fascinating.
didn't watch that, but
it's worthwhile.
it'd probably make me very angry.
It would.
Yeah.
But I think even just the ethical implications in the notion of like my livelihood or being at the expense of another person, in the situation in this movie, it's very literal in the sense of one sibling to live, another one has to die. They don't know that at the time that they're dying, but there is that sense of sacrifice, and that one sibling certainly is going to be separated from the family, and even if they were cryogenically frozen and reawoken sometime later, everybody they knew would be gone. To put it in like a context for like today, do I contribute to businesses that rely on slave labor? Because that's a way in which I'm contributing to certainly potentially the literal death of someone, but at least the stealing of life, in the sense of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, as it were, those things being taken from someone else so I could have a really, cheap t-shirt.
I think with when you were talking, Michael, it kind of scared me a bit because you had mentioned like the cost of someone's life if we buy something that is behind slavery. Well, it's a lose-lose. So like when you really think deep into it, like behind the scenes, you're not buying the dollar flip-flops anymore. So what's happening to that family that was working for nothing but might have gotten a rat like those girls got for dinner? Now they're not getting anything. We're trying to help the world, but at the same time we could be hurting the world, So
I think
this is like something to think about.
Yeah,
no, it's a good point, and I think it's challenging. Like it's like always trying to like progress and move into the right direction, and knowing that we don't always know exactly what the right direction is, but just, and trying to at least do our best to move in the right direction, but also knowing that we're not perfect. We're not always going to make the best decision in these times. It's funny because, like, in a way, the film kind of touches on that, exactly what you're saying, in their world, which is Glenn Close's character was murdering all these children because she's like, if we don't, like, people are going to die. It's like, but you're killing people.
Killing them.
Right.
So it's like,
and her defense, right, is they didn't suffer. They didn't suffer.
Yeah. And her idea is, okay, you had 7 people that were taking resources away from people. So like her truth and her morality revolved around who she thought deserved to be alive, which was you were born, you're the firstborn. Those are the rules. If you are outside of those rules, like, it's your parents' fault that you're outside of those rules. I'm just trying to keep things in order. I don't agree with that, but that's her truth. In her mind, she was doing the right thing, which is kind of scary.
This is what's really good about good dystopian storytelling, is that instead of having a situation like you might have in a superhero movie, and especially like with very young children's stories, where you have characters that are bad characters that are self-aware, that like, I'm a bad character and I'm just, no, the really complex reality of the world is no one ever thinks that they're the bad guy. Everyone has what feels to them, at least, very reasonable justifications for why they're doing what they're doing. And so everyone in their own mind thinks of themselves as the hero of the story, not necessarily as the bad guy. And that's, I think, a sobering thought to think that, SS soldiers in World War II carrying out executions of Jews for the Nazis, many of them just thought, I'm doing the right thing. I'm just following orders. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing because, you buy into a certain set of logic and rules and ideas, and it sounds so reasonable.
Yeah.
That's why I think careful criticism and skepticism is really important. I think that's why one of the important roles of like good dystopian stories like this play out for us, because the risk is always that we become the monster we're trying to fight,
Yeah.
And I think we're, to some degree, we're seeing that even happen today. Our culture's progressed to a point where so many, I think, good liberal principles of freedom of speech and things like that have been promoted. But now we have this issue of everybody has the freedom of speech until you say something I disagree with or I find really offensive. And then now you don't have the freedom anymore to say that. And there's not enough self-awareness in that for the recognition of like, wait, you're saying one thing, but then doing something else entirely. But that person in that moment still is perfectly convinced that they are following the rules that they sincerely believe are right. So it takes self-examination. I think it takes that kind of.
A lot of us don't self-examine.
Yeah.
I think what you just said is so valuable, because I see that in a lot of groups, right? Like, oh, we're accepting and loving if you think the way we do. It's like,
yeah. We're perfectly willing to accept you and befriend you and love you if you're willing to kind of like toe the line. If you toe our line, then we're
and it's like, I think
then that's not really accepting and loving.
And I think it's hard, right? I'm not saying it's easy, but I think like really it comes down to being like, can you disagree and just disagree, like because I mean, does that mean you disagree on everything? More likely than not, you don't disagree with somebody on everything.
Right.
There are things you will disagree on, and I think what ends up happening is we fixate on the thing we disagree, and we create an enemy, versus focusing on things that we agree on, and create a friendship or a brother or sister in that our journey in life. And we just focus on, well, they disagree with me on this, so therefore I hate them or they're my enemy.
Unfair.
Like you're saying, like nobody sees themselves as the bad guy. Like there's a value in that, there's something that they're passionate about, and it can be hard, but if you can put yourself in that mindset and still believe what you believe and be like, I don't agree, but I'm trying to think the way you think, and this is why I still think it's wrong, but I don't know, instead of like looking at people as objects and enemies, but like
looking at us as people. I'm struck by the notion that especially when we talk about like people making choices or taking views that we think are very destructive, oftentimes it's born out of fear. So even just a while back, I watched this interview with a relatively young couple, has kids, and they are white supremacists. And seeing them talk, and especially the interviewing the wife, and hearing her talk about why she's a white supremacist, because she's so afraid that minorities are going to take away resources that she feels her children should get. And she's just so afraid of that. And just to hear that, it's like eye-opening, because it's like, I see how this fear is controlling you. But have you like examined that fear? Have you questioned whether that's a reasonable fear to have? Even if that fear is true, have you questioned whether or not it's reasonable to put your children above someone else's children, irregardless of what you think of another race or ethnicity or nationality? But I think that, and the movie kind of touches to some degree on this too, the notion that familial bond has a profound pull and sway on us. I think it would have been interesting to see more of like Glenn Close's character and what choice would she make if it was her child that was pregnant with multiple children, you know, because that idea of the rules are the rules until it affects me or it affects the people I love, suddenly the rules feel a little less important, I think. At least that's a very human reality of it. I think it was a very real human tendency.
Oh, God. I didn't go off when Michael talked about the white supremacists. Come on.
I know, right?
Well, that's your green light.
Well, no, because I see it in my own race, too. We think that we can't get ahead because of white people.
We can't.
This is not true because I raised a neuroscientist and I'm black. You gotta, like you said, you gotta look at your own thing and say, you know, is this the right fear to have? No, it's not. I don't want this fear. So you can have that, and I'm gonna push forward and raise my little black boy and my little white boy to be the best person that they can be.
Thank you so much for watching our discussion about what happened to Monday. Hopefully you enjoyed this, found it thoughtful. Are there other themes and ideas that you saw in the movie that you feel are worth discussing? Please comment below. And be sure to hit subscribe so you can check out more of our videos and our short films and other material that we continue to put out to help people explore interesting and thoughtful ideas that come up in the movies that we watch. Join us for the next episode, and thank you for watching.
Bye.
Toodles.